Welcome to the show today. This is Mike and Doug. I'm Doug. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Doug, it has been a while since we've talked.
It sure has been. You've been down so deep in the mines, I think you hit the core of the earth and you've come up with one of the most miraculous things in the modern technological age, which we may talk about today. And I have been so far out in the cosmos studying plasma and its distinction from matter that we just haven't had a chance to sit down. And so as we're catching up, we thought, well, maybe we should just do a recording and we'll address some of the questions that some of our subscribers have sent in. So today we're going to be talking about a few topics, but
Well,
the
Douglas, can I just say that there's quite a bit of difference between ether on the one hand and bits and bytes from encryption on the other hand. So yes, this is quite a contrast.
isn't it? I mean, you were down so literally into the digital world, digital realm, and I'm out there where no, they don't care about anything man-made out in the cosmos. And it doesn't apply. The rules down here don't apply out there. So it's really quite a distinction between the
It
two
is.
research areas we've been focusing on. But you have come up with basically the thing that everybody wants now, which is a cryptological system that is foolproof so you can have secure communications with emails and with massive attachment files. And no one's ever done this before. And of course, Trump is demanding anyone who works with the government have this. Well, right now, you're just finishing the fine details of putting out your MySkiff Messenger vault, which is really the solution to so many of these problems. Now, and so we have questions about crypto coins. So we might start off with that if you want, but we'll start in one of these three areas. People ask a bunch of questions. I read them beforehand. Crypto coins, where do they come from? Is it the future? Should we invest? Should we invest now, or should we be afraid? What do you think about that? What do you think
Well,
about?
before we go to crypto coins, just a little bit more on the comments on email. So what we have discovered and now put to software is a new way to handle email. And as it turns out, if you know my background, you know I rebuilt AT&T's email system in the mid 90s and also worked with Lotus's CC Mail product. So know a few things about how to handle email in a scaled way. And then when we invented social networking, we included a web-based email system in that design, which is now used by many people, including Gmail. I think we're the right people to do what we've done. And what we've ended up discovering, we've invented, is the first true innovation in electronic messaging since the early 90s. So 25, 30 years. And it bypasses all of the insecure protocols that are out there now. Everybody's worried about their emails being intercepted or data mined or sold. And all those things are true, and they should be concerned about that. And with this invention of Message Vault, we shut the door on the back doors of email.
Well, you invented as part of your suite of, I would call them different software applications, all the things that are not only part of social media. Didn't you also have an encrypted system? Didn't you also consider crypto coins or some kind of money
Yes.
exchange in these systems? So you were ahead of your time by many, many years. And now they can't. Oh my goodness. When we start talking about Bitcoin, but we're also going to talk about Russia. We're also going to talk about the Trump administration and basically kind of take a globe-trotting approach to
Okay.
geopolitics today. But let's start off with crypto coins since we're already into that. Here's my opinion of that. You must be out of your mind. Every new technology comes from DARPA stealing through the British Serco company, putting it into a transnational group, Highlands Forum, Highlands Group, giving it to capital ventures, venture capitalists, and then they turn it into military weapons under the excuse of medical application for soldiers. We don't help our soldiers. What are you talking about? You're spending trillions of dollars to help our soldiers. You don't help them. They're on the streets.
Yeah.
So
They
pay
experiment
attention
on them.
here. Yeah, they experiment on them. So, what's going on here now is the fact that crypto coin from the beginning was a it was a nefarious plot to basically see how far they could go. And the inventor of it, of course, disappears with 1.1 million coins for Bitcoin. And all these, Trump's got his own crypto coin. All the countries around the world were almost all set up to go with the Bank of International Settlements to be the clearinghouse for basically national banks and central banks from all these different countries all working together. It's all digitized. And then what happened? Coronal mass ejections. How many times have you heard me say this? See you tomorrow. Well, if we don't have a coronal mass ejection that wipes us all out, and particularly technology, which would push us back into the Stone Age, and that could wipe out all crypto coins. Plus, remember, no one knows how many crypto coins have been stolen because there's 1.1 million gone out of Bitcoin alone. And when they go through the Bitcoin exchanges, tens of billions of dollars come up missing from one day to the next. And since they do not have MySkiff Messenger Vault, the back door is still in crypto coins. So, using hash trees and all these things that they think are these digital ledgers, they think this is secure. Yeah. None of that's secure. So it's complete insanity. But what is really going on, we just got through seeing European Union, Germany, and America all say the same thing. Oh, by the way, now that we accept crypto coins, anything left in beyond 90 days, we're taking. Debanking through crypto coins, as well as they'll be taxing you on every crypto exchange. And for each exchange and your capital gains, not like in the stock market where you only pay one time a year for taxes. And even then you lie because you just move things around, move it into offshore account, whatever. So crypto coin is one of the biggest Ponzi schemes I've ever seen, but it doesn't mean, like in these gambling casinos called the stock market or the commodities exchange, that you can't go out and make a ton of money off of this Ponzi scheme if you wanted to.
Yeah, so let's talk about what we know. We know that in 1995, the Clinton White House set up this organization called the Highlands Forum, or the Highlands Group. And their job was to work with elements within the Department of Defense, especially DARPA, to develop ways to weaponize any technology that would allow them to continue achieving their objective of a one world government tied to the British Pilgrims Society. That's what we now know for a fact. And in those original meetings was a gentleman by the name of Philip Venables, who was at Goldman Sachs. And his specific job was to promote cryptocurrencies. This was back in 95, actually before that, 93. And wouldn't you know it, in Obama's Technology Council, in the days before he left office, he was having meetings with his Technology Council. And guess who one of the participants was that was the expert in cryptocurrency? Same man, Philip Venables from Goldman Sachs. And then in 2018, Goldman Sachs was issued a patent which essentially subsumed all crypto coins into an approach that Goldman Sachs was going to use for managing crypto coins going forward. And one of the specific differences was they were going to take all the existing cryptocurrency that's out there, supposedly independent, supposedly unable to be controlled, and they were going to subsume all of those coins underneath this currency exchange that Goldman had filed a patent for. And there was one proviso: you had to be able to identify the owner of the cryptocurrency before they would allow it into their exchange. That's we know. Go out and read that patent. And that was in 2018. Isn't that interesting? Right before COVID. So everything we see along this path leads us to the clear conclusion that cryptocurrency is a grifter system intended to carry on with this idea of a global currency that would be controlled by the banks, especially the Bank for International Settlement, which is controlled by the City of London. That's things we know. What we don't know is necessarily all the individual protocols inside these different encryption systems. But let me give you an anecdotal example. I was talking with our chief mathematician with polymorphic encryption for this message vault product we're coming out with. And I asked him, we were talking about cryptocurrency, and he's very knowledgeable on it. And I was asking him specifically about the encryption protocols that are used to secure these coins, and the way they use public and private keys, and the way they allegedly secure the coin from being hacked. And we talked for a while, and I concluded, Al, do you own any cryptocurrency? He said, I think you already know the answer. I don't. And I says, do you think you ever will? He says, no, I never will. And I think from one of the world's top experts in the field of cryptology and mathematics, especially the mathematics of public and private keys, you had your answer. Cryptocurrency is insecure. But that's never stopped the public from continuing on, because I ask you, how many use Gmail, knowing that Gmail mines your data and sells your data to third parties? A lot of people, they just ignore certain things when they're not convenient. And that's what we've got right now. We've got a lot of people playing in the market, hoping they could get in and out of the market before it crashes or is subsumed by the CBDC, central bank digital currency. And it reminds me of the early days of the internet, when the weaponization people at DARPA and IBM and Microsoft and Oracle and Sun were in the process of building their one world data processing approach. And they didn't have enough R&D staff to be able to build all the possibilities that they had opened up. So they opened it up to the general public, and that's how when I got into the business. And so a lot of us who are out there having creative thoughts, we're building product and services, but that was just the ruse. And what they have now done is they have subsumed all of those inventions and all that innovation into this Borg-like entity called the World Communication System, where they have now taken over or stolen the product, which they did in my case, or they've knocked off some of the inventors to get the product. But basically, their idea of a one world communication system is in process now. And so one of the things we did is, over the last 10 years, begin to researching when this started. And I can bottom line it. It started with Samuel Morse and the Morse code, and the Rothschild banks sending Morse code signals from Germany to England in order to stay on top of the markets. And once the banking community discovered that in order to control the markets, they had to control communication in order to get a leg up on all these markets, day trading and whatever, that's when communications was taken over by the banks, specifically the City of London banks. And everything that's happened since then has all been a part of this strategy to make sure, when wireless came along, that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was at the Navy, organized the RCA company, the Radio Corporation of America, to consolidate a monopoly on all communication going forward. So do you think, with the bankers controlling that system and building these technologies out ever since the Marconi days in the late 1800s, early 1900s, do you think the banks are just going to let these independent cryptocurrencies survive in their knowing their desire for hegemony in controlling communications in order to control transactions? They never have. Now, they made the public think through their control of propaganda that they have, and that's useful for a time. But in the end, it's the same people. We're dealing with the same people 120 or more years later.
That's why the central banks are all the same people. That's why they created the Bank for International Settlements, which is the most corrupt clearinghouse and bank in the world. And that's why at Bretton Woods, John Maynard Keynes came up with the Banco, the one world currency, which he promoted even before the United Nations, World Bank, and the World Trade Organization and IMF came up. They all want one world currency. That's called your carbon footprint. And they need a digital currency so they can take it out of your account, before you get your money. It's like people who are on Social Security. They take out their part before they send it to you.
I mean, in parallel, they developed the concept of carbon credits. And guess who the software developers in the world are that lead the way in building carbon credit enterprise data processing systems? It comes out of England. It's funded by the City of London. So if we think for a moment that the English are not running the game worldwide right now in the Russia-Ukrainian hoax, we are being naive.
Blair is still leading it worldwide. He actually charges unbelievable amounts of money to tell countries how to get in line so they can pay their carbon footprint taxes.
Well, if you look at their corporate returns right now, their annual reports, they're all including carbon credits as a fact of life in these companies in Europe.
And of course, carbon credits is ridiculous because the ocean can absorb all the carbon dioxide that the Earth can ever create and more. And if anyone knows about the carbon dioxide cycle in the Earth, then you know it's complete nonsense and it has no relationship to the sun. Here's what's really going on. The rich people years ago with, what was that vice president, the guy who started all this with the fake charts?
Gore?
Al Gore came up with the fake
He
statistics.
invented the internet too, by the way.
He invented the internet, and he lives in houses that are not green. But anyway, the point is that was all made up because they simply looked at the next solar cycle and they understood that in the 25th solar cycle, we would probably have the greatest amount of solar flares, biggest solar flares and coronal mass ejections. And that's what we're seeing. And that's what's causing so many problems all over the Earth with wireless communication, with radio communication, so on and so forth, as well as electron pushing from the sun that has caused, all of Spain and parts of France and Portugal to go black with no electricity repeatedly. These things are the sun. So they all timed it to when they thought the sun was going to go into a solar minimum at the end of this cycle. Well, they didn't expect this cycle to be so big. So what happens in the height of a solar maximum cycle is a lot of volcanoes. They're at their maximum now. Crazy weather. The other day, we had 26 tornadoes start at one time in this alley that's been created in mid-America. We have the northern jet stream has collapsed. That's why this weather pattern's happening. We've had the equatorial jet stream collapse. We've had the ocean streams. That's all sun. So do you think they didn't know this? This was all well predicted, that we can predict even now what the solar minimum is going to produce. So, of course, the rich people started telling us that we had to change the climate. By the way, with the huge amounts of money already spent, can anyone show any change in the climate? Are we getting any bang for the buck? I don't think so.
I have a lot of extra dust on my cars in my house right now.
And by the way, where is that coming up? It's coming up Central America, the same alley that's being created by the collapse of the northern jet stream and the equatorial jet stream towards mid-America. And they call that the collapse of the Arctic vortex. They're not saying why. Well, the why is because the sun controls all weather through ocean currents, and ocean currents determine ice accumulation. And when ice comes up out of the ocean, it has no salt in it, so it creates salination in the ocean, which causes the ocean currents to change. So yes, all that is true, but is there one word about the sun in any of the climate control statements or mandates or moratoriums? No, none, zero, and nobody's done one single speck to help climate control.
It doesn't fit the narrative, Douglas.
And the Green New Deal is the same insanity that matches the climate control nonsense. It's pure insanity on both parts. And crypto coin is nothing more than what I call technological hopium, which is predictions about what tech can do, which it can't do. It doesn't do now, but they predict it will do soon. So they predict there'll be quantum computers. No, there will not be. They predict there'll be quantum computers that can break cryptology. No, they now find that quantum computers have no ability to protect their information, even the tiny bits.
Can I make
Please
a
do.
comment on that? Well, the idea that quantum computers won't happen is tempered a little bit by some of the experts, and they are saying that there may be quantum applications in certain limited ways, but they're all going to have to be tied to supercomputers because quantum computers are not stable. They require cold temperatures that are colder than deep space in order to operate at all. And then it's only for microseconds at a time. And then it takes 3 days to cool the computer down so they can try again. So there's a whole host of variables that, again, talking to some of the people who are in the quantum computer upper echelon, they report from a meeting they had about 2 months ago that they've all concluded that quantum, they're never going to say never because they're scientists, but and engineers. But what they are saying is very unlikely at all, ever. But applications related to certain really limited problem sets, maybe 10, 20 years from now, maybe.
But the Chat GPT and Grok generated memes about what China's inventing in the quantum computers. No, look closely. Microsoft just stopped their Willow program, which was their qubit that was feeding their Sycamore quantum computer. They closed it down because they found that there was no way to contain broadcasts of quantum entanglement. And so therefore, the myth quantum computers must be invented right now as fast as we can. We must spend more money on that than the poor people on the street who are homeless and the starving people. And we must do this. Why? Because quantum computers will be able to break out any kind of digital communications, because it will be able to go right through secure systems. As we know, our guy, who I like to call Dr. Algorithm, has broken out, what is it called? AES 256? Is that what it's called?
A long time ago, back in 2014. Since then, he's broken all 6 classes of encryption that was supposed to replace it. So there is no secure encryption out there on the market right now, except for the one we're introducing called Message Vault.
And what I love is when you started this project, you started it with my skiff to send messages. Now you've turned it so it can be emails and it's so incredible. I can even use it. He was watching me today use it. Even I can use it, Mr. Luddite.
Yes, I can announce to the world that Douglas Gabriel was able to install it and use it within 5 minutes.
And it's easy as pie. And you just go, come on, for the first time, I can. Do you know that how many people they're arresting a day? 40 to 50 people a day are arrested in Britain for saying one wrong word on their Gmail account. Doesn't matter how old you are. They put you in jail. They don't even tell you how long you're going to be there.
Right.
Now, Britain has said they want to arrest Americans saying things about them in America and extradite them to Britain to put them in jail.
Right.
That's the insanity. Look, we are
like they did with Julian Assange. He was arrested and then extradited to England, and then they were going to try to bring him to the U.S. And these people are relentless when they want to shut people down. Before we get off this topic, though, I want to mention. So we're talking about crypto. We're talking about Bitcoin. We're talking about encryption, and I hope everybody sees the pattern there. There is a lot of what we call fear porn that is related to technology, where if they want to put you in a state of fear, which will galvanize all your fight or flight responses, all they do is issue propaganda that says a story that they want you to believe. Now, look, Star Wars was not feasible at the time. We've got even the breakup of AT&T. Everybody thought, oh, well, they've broken up the monopoly. AT&T is going to break up into these baby bells. Well, those were nothing more than making more opportunities for brokers, bankers, accountants, and attorneys to grift. And what have they done? They've grifted the heck out of all those baby bells and then brought them back up together into 1 or 2 companies, Verizon and AT&T and a few others. So we are the victims of endless propaganda from banks who have endless money to pay people to lie. And what we've got to do is learn how to manage these lies so that we can start elevating truth into this scenario.
Truth is a rare commodity like common sense these days. And the fear of propaganda causes you to go into cognitive dissonance. It causes cortical and adrenaline releases in your brain so that you can't think. And that's what they count on. They count on people who are automatons who simply are reacting to the assault that they are having from every direction. And you have no
Right.
time to think. You have no time to sit back and reflect. And even if you did, you'd be with your phone or your computer because you have none of us have enough appreciation for the millions of people who had to spend their entire life really to create innovations that go into a massive amount of patents and uh, innovation that create a computer or a phone. We don't deserve to have the apparent omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence that these devices give us. What it does is it makes us very luciferic. It makes us either withdrawn from the earth so that we go off and live in an ivory tower and we're asocial or antisocial, or we enter into the computer so much that you believe everything that they tell you there's a math equation to prove. In other words,
Well, I think what
materialistic
you're saying
science.
is so important, Douglas, and there aren't that many people that understand how technology affects human beings. And I'm going to mention that you used to be involved in uh, basically various areas of demon possession and how to free people from that. And I think what you've shared with me many times is we're seeing this layering of lies that has become codified in laws have become demonic on their own. And then the laws are being used to protect other demons who are continuing this process. And I think that's the element of the spiritual element of technology that has to be broken, and we have to bring truth into our digital lives and be thankful for the things that have occurred that so many humans and their creativity have created here.
Truth history, what you and Tyler and myself have created 800 gigabytes of truth. And now we're going to start putting them out in a new fashion. But the point is that you have to be raised in this. It has to be your ritual that you're involved in. So what is your ritual? If you're a rich Pilgrims Society British family, what is normal is starting wars and killing millions of people. And that's
Right.
completely acceptable to you because you were raised in that. Now, people will say there's also the pedophilia. Well, certainly in politics in Britain, I mean, it's as thick as thieves. The graft, the grifting, the fleecing, the basically institutionalized machinations that keep people enslaved economically, socially, mentally. That's what these families
Right.
have focused on and taught their own children. Do you think they're going to be any different? Now, if you're raised and you didn't have a babysitter, you had an iPad. Who's your daddy? Who's your mama? Okay?
Exactly.
Demons. Because that child can't understand the magic in that black box. They can't understand the effort that someone like you spent how long creating the software and the code for social media being scalable. How much money did you spend? And then that was built on by literally tens of thousands of people who've built this up to the point that it's at now. And yet they don't know they even have the, uh, let's see if I can say it, dual EC MRBG backdoor.
ERBG. Yes.
Oh, darn it. One day I will get that straight. But there's a backdoor
Well,
that a code reader can
let's
find
talk
in
about
all
that.
of this stuff.
Dual EC DRBG. That's a dual elliptical curve algorithm that's used for security. But it also has built-in backdoors. Well, those dual EC elliptical curve algorithms predominate in the Bitcoin space, in the cryptocurrency space, including Bitcoin. So there you have your clue that DARPA's got its hands on the back end of this. And by the way, the crypto domains are all in the .io domain, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean on an island called Diego Garcia. That's public, can't even go to. It's a Navy operation where the U.S. Navy has contracted with British Serco to run our Navy satellites out of Diego Garcia. So every road is leading back to the city of London.
And so there's literally a teensy tiny island that has a set of servers that could turn it off, and so much of the corruption would just be gone because that's where it's
Right.
all centered through. But I sure they have a backup somewhere in London, in the city of London. But you just said that Dr. Algorithm the other day was looking at crypto coin hash trees or something, and that he found that they were all the same size. And so he just laughed and he said, "This is so easy to break. I can't even believe who are the
That
people that even made this. It's so simple to break." That's crypto coins
those were
for
the
you people.
modes on regular encryption that were supposed to replace AES 256. Now they're applying the two together as a wrapper and calling it cyber blockchain. So it essentially it is the same set of flaws that Dr. Algorithm has cracked. I mean, the guy's a true genius. And I asked him, "Are you ever going to build a back door into any of the work you do?" He said, "First of all, I can't." And then he said, "Even if I could, I wouldn't, because I don't want to leave a legacy of evil when I die."
The same reason, McKibben, you're not a trillionaire. Had you allowed them to put the back door into your suite of
Yeah.
applications, leader technologies, you would be as rich as the 5 richest people in Silicon Valley, and all of them are fake. And all you have to do is just listen to Peter Thiel try to speak, listen to Zuckerberg try to find a thought in his brain-bleached mind, listen to Elon Musk, who hasn't invented anything but insists his name goes on every patent in every company that he does a leveraged, violent overthrow of. Remember when he went to Tesla, he made them agree to say that he was there when they were invented, the Tesla
Well,
cars.
I mean, I don't know if it was Freudian, but the first 3 people you mentioned were all hanging around at PayPal when those guys discovered and coached Zuckerberg at Harvard to start Facebook as the front man for them to be able to apply our invention to all of their various machinations.
Now, remember, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and all those other assholes. Oh, excuse me.
Censor.
Peter Thiel and all those other very evil people all believe in dark enlightenment. And that's the reason Elon Musk wore a hat that said dark MAGA. Trump never understood what that was. It was never explained to him that it is a violent, drug-centered, pharmaceutical drug-centered attempt to overthrow all government and replace it with a corporatocracy based upon technology, i.e., Elon Musk would rule America. Now, in Elon Musk's drug-inflicted brain, that's what he thought he was doing, and he thought Trump was on board with it. Now he's out, and Peter Thiel is in, and he's part of the gang too.
Well, didn't yesterday Musk actually say Trump's got to go so that J.D. Vance could be installed?
That is the word on the street. I don't know if it's true, but that would be consistent with what we know, because Peter Thiel was the bunk buddy of J.D. Vance, who's an idiot. And he's basically been groomed so that he looks to have the appearance of a presidential nature. And then, of course, he's buddies with all these other people, as well as his wife is buddies with all the wrong people. And his wife, Stephen Miller's wife, has now gone over to work for Elon Musk. And you wonder, the word on the street is, did Elon Musk seduce the best mind that Trump has working for him, Stephen Miller? You have to wonder. And Peter Thiel, he's an idiot. Listen to him speak. He's just like Elon Musk. He's just like Zuckerberg. They have no clue about what their company is doing. Now, let's look at Elon Musk right now. 40% of the Teslas have been vandalized in the world.
Is that
He's
right?
had multiple places have been firebombed. And people aren't even put in jail for what they do. One guy did it to 20 cars in one day, and they didn't even give him a fine, didn't put him in jail, didn't charge him with anything. And so Elon Musk has right now 40 to 50 Starlink satellites falling from the sky because of the coronal mass ejections. The electron and proton forcing happening on the Earth is so powerful right now. It's absolutely unprecedented. So what happens when that goes on? You see what we would call Armageddon. You'd see the apocalypse. You'd see volcanoes, earthquakes, wildfires like you've never seen before, tornadoes, strange weather, ocean current changes. All these things are all happening. And the rich people all knew this, and they all gave it a date, didn't they? They all told us exactly when it would happen. Happens to be the very date that most of the people watching the sun say could be the end of humanity.
Hmm.
And look at what the astrophysicists say. They say that our magnetic field of the Earth is depleted to such a point that if it keeps continuing in its exponential growth, we will no longer have a geomagnetic field by the end of 2025, this year. So we would have nothing to protect us from some of the biggest assaults or onslaughts of what's called solar forcing. Both the solar wind, coronal mass ejections, ion flow, proton flow, all these different things, gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, all of that is hitting us right now. So what's happening? Spiritual people are evolving and taking a huge step forward. Evil people are taking a big step backwards.
Hmm.
So what do you see? You're going to see, because if they're not connected to their angel, they're going to have neurosis in their thinking, psychosis in their feeling, and aberrations of sex and violence, and basically addiction to the dark side in their willpower. And you can see that happening everywhere. Name a country that doesn't have a psychopath running it right now.
Hmm.
My mind goes blank. I can't think of one. Why is it that the psychopaths who are megalomaniacs, who drive you into neurosis because of the insanity that they do, you can't figure out what Trump's doing right now? People say, why is Elon doing? Well, Elon's always been consistently insane. The man has been off his rocker since his first bad invention where they had to take the code. When he sold it, that's how he got the money to become a PayPal mafia, right? He sold some software that didn't work. And that's his only claim to fame in his whole life. And yet he became one of the richest people in the world.
It's really clear from his history, which we did quite a while ago, that he goes back to British aristocracy back even before the American Revolution. And that one of his relatives, a Haldeman, related to H.R. Haldeman in the Nixon administration, was the leader of the British forces in Canada during the Revolution.
Trump knew when he got Elon on his side, and Elon knew if Elon wasn't drugged up all the time. And by the way, dark enlightenment worships pharmaceutical drugs because they believe they can create the future. Now, what does he believe in? He believes in augmenting humans. That's never going to work. You're never going to put a machine in the human body that the machine will not figure out, that the body won't figure out a way to counteract it. It'll send GABA 6 plus macrophages up there, and it'll excrete ozone, and it'll cause it to rust in the first few weeks. It's never going to work. It didn't work in any monkeys. And Elon Musk wants to be the first one to put it in his head so he can connect with the internet. Not good enough to have it in your glasses, not good enough to have it in a screen in front of you, augmented, so that you can actually have a keyboard right here in empty space. It's projecting it and you can work on it. They have all of that, right? That's all going to be, that's a fad. They're going to eventually realize, well, first off, let me go back. We are in apocalypse now. We are in Armageddon now. There's a new guy who says he's the Messiah, the Sunni Mahdi, the Shiite Mahdi, the Christian Jesus reincarnated, and the Baha'i. Every predicted great spiritual person, this person comes out and in clear English preaches this. So we have bombs going over Megiddo between Golan Heights, which was stolen by the Israelis, and Lebanon, which is being bombed by the Israelis, and the Israelis and Lebanon's bombing the Israelis. So we have in Armageddon, the battle is going on, and this new Mahdi says he's going to go and be in Damascus. And once that happens, that's the last sign, and that's the end of the world. Now, let's remember that the three religions of the book say the same thing. The Jesuits say in apocalyptic theology that Jesus will come on a white horse. That's not in the Bible. This is Jesuitism, right? But that we'll have a physical leader who will then control the world. Oh, what were we just talking about? Controlling the world. And all religions will become one. Well, that's exactly what the new Pope is saying. And the previous dead Pope now, Francis, was saying. One religion, one world government, one currency, but it is going to be fought over by the Muslims and their Mahdis. Now, the great thing about that is the Sunni Mahdi and the Shia Mahdi will fight each other until they all die. This is written. This is what's predicted. This white horse with Jesus coming on a white horse with the sword to conquer the world, that ain't going to happen. That's not who Jesus Christ is. This is not going to happen. But they believe
what they were expecting at the first incarnation.
Yeah, and the Jews say the Messiah is here, and now there's like 3 or 4 Jewish messiahs, and they also say the second Messiah they say is Trump, and we already know that
who says it's Trump?
They gave him the award. They gave him an award as the hero. This big old plaque and this big thing. They gave him this award for being what do they call it? The conqueror, the hero.
You mean Israel?
Yes, Israel gave it to Trump.
Oh.
Yeah, he might as well have a yarmulke on.
I got to get out more, Douglas.
You've been down in the mines. I watch this stuff because I try to keep up with my wife, and if you don't keep up with her Gab site, well, you just don't know nothing, because she has it all on there. She has, I don't know how many people give from all over the world, and then she sorts it all and goes through everything and then gives you every day a summary. It's better than what the president. Notice the president stopped his intelligence reports lately. We're supposed to talk about the Trump administration. Well, let me just say, that's what Trump is facing. He's facing the Jews believe Bibi Netanyahu, who still has 3 felonies for basically fraud and oil manipulation, right? He said, what? People in northern Gaza, get out or you're all dead. And by the way, there's nowhere for you to go in southern Gaza. And the Egyptians don't want you. The Jordanians don't want you. Nobody wants you. What has he declared? What they have always believed. The Jews believe they should kill every Muslim, and the Muslims believe they should kill every Jew. How are you going to work with that? And then the Christians, well, what are the Christians doing? They're getting slaughtered all over the world. Here in America, it's not even safe to be a Christian anymore. In Africa, they kill you. All over the place, you're just killed if you're a Christian. So what is really happening? So what is Trump's going to do with this? Because there's another Armageddon happening, and that's what we just talked about, the technological Armageddon that now Peter Thiel, McAfee, all of the top Silicon Valley people who were on the original committee for creating morality and ethics with artificial intelligence all got off the committee and said, including Bill Gates, it's the end of humanity. They all say it. Sam Altman, OpenAI, it's the end of humanity in less than 10 years. So again, the sun looks like we're in the apocalypse politically, socially, economically, emotionally, religiously, technologically. Rudolf Steiner said that at this time, at the turn of the century, we would have a chance that the war of all against all would happen now. Now, the good thing about it is, and that's why I'm doing my research on plasma, is he described the new force that they would come up with that would be a weapon that would have certain capacities. And unfortunately, it looks as if my research is demonstrating that that is what they're calling plasma. For instance, you know how many plasma tomomacs there are in the world? There's dozens of them. Any one of them could blow up with a fusion reaction as they're trying to create plasma containment for magnetohydrodynamic generators, create a sun on the Earth. How stupid could you be? Who allowed this to go forward? Or the research in CERN? They're accelerating particles to the speeds that were supposedly during the Big Bang so that they can then find out little neutrinos and antiprotons. And none of that is real. That's all fake to begin with. But what did they do the other day? They captured their first, what was it, antiproton, and it created an explosion that blew up the facility.
Was that right?
So they moved it into the ocean, deep into the ocean, and it caused this huge explosion that almost created a tsunami. To capture one of these supposed particles, which they're not capturing, they just created a device that can create a magnetic field that can hold stuff that then blows up. That's all they're doing. So they don't understand electricity and
So
magnetism.
it's a fake explosion.
No, it's a real explosion, and CERN could be a bigger one. And they wanted to create a 10 times bigger third collider, had the Large Hadron Collider. They wanted to create one 10 times bigger. And now they've said no, because they found out that there is no third collider. Never was. And those statistics that they create, that mathematical equations on their computer printout, is all nonsense. There's no boson particles. There's no quarks. There's none of that. Those are all mathematical theoretical equations based upon the observer phenomena, that when you are looking for something, you will find it if you create a machine that's going to find it. That's what you created the machine for. So it's going to tell you.
They do have proton mail over there.
That's about the only proton that they understand. So what we have here is, on all fronts, it seems like apocalypse. But what people forget is the good people are saved from apocalypse. They're harvested ahead of time by Christ in the cloud with the sickle, and the rest are put into the wine press, right? That's right in the beginning.
Okay, so here's my question. Let's just assume everything you said is, well, everybody believes that these are the factors, but what if 90% of what you just said is pure kabuki theater and not true? And yet it's been whipped up into a way where all these spinning eddies are all coming together in a propaganda extravaganza to whip the world up into being open to the idea of a one world dictator. That seems more likely to me, that it's not true, most of it.
And there's a lot of evidence for that. When Syria looked like it was going to be World War III, because Damascus on the outside had been bombed and it was coming closer, and their predictions are, when Damascus is totally destroyed, the Mahdi will return and the end is here, and the Muslims will take over the world, okay? Russia moved tactical nuclear weapons into Syria, into a port and an air base there, that they were supporting the president of Syria at the time. Now all of that has changed, and even some European countries are sending back their Syrian refugees, saying you have no more war, because it was Barack Obama who created the 5 factions. The first faction was a CIA faction, and then Obama came along and added 4 other ones. ISIL was his correct. He created that and he funded it. So now what do you see with Putin? Putin has just been fighting a war until Zelensky in Ukraine had no more ammunition. They had no more people. They had no more tanks. Putin hadn't blown up their infrastructures. He hadn't blown up Kiev. He was very merciful on them. And I said this from the beginning, that's what would happen. And then basically, here's Zelensky going to every country, doing every kind of perverted pornographic dance and song and dance routine he could to get money. And then he gets a little bit of money from European Union. And then what happens? Then the European Union, then British, that already mobilized their army, over a year ago. So Britain's been fighting Putin against NATO agreements for well over a year, and they have been mobilized.
Let's add another element. Those high-tech weapons, the missiles and the drones, could not operate without our American satellite system. So America is playing in this game as well, not just the British.
Elon Musk was thanked by Trump for giving Ukraine Starlink capacity to spy on Putin. And basically, we were in a proxy war through Elon Musk, because he's basically, he's a private public entity with his military contracts.
The definition of fascist.
And let's also remember that Dmitry Alperovich gave them the wrong information with the initial bombing of Donbass. So we've been using technology in Ukraine for a long time. And we have all the people who tried to get Trump on the Ukrainian impeachment. Every one of them came out and admitted they were guilty, and they still are guilty. And they still want Ukraine to be the most corrupt place in the world, because it's the #1 money laundering place in the world right now. especially for American Republicans and Democrats and American people who say they're Americans, and particularly when they're technologists. So anyway, Putin comes out, and what does he see? He sees one false flag after the next, right? He sees 3 attempts on the bridge to Crimea that the Ukrainians can't pull off. But now, they've blown the snot out of it. That wasn't Ukrainians. They're all dead. That was British. Once again, British commandos, just like the beginning of the war was British commandos blowing up the power plant that ran the 2 largest pipelines across Ukraine. That's how the war started. The Donbass region was settled by 2 legal elections, and then the president of Ukraine bombed the Donbass people and killed 100,000 or more of his own people. And that was the war that was going on. And they used all their weapons, and then they used them on Putin. Remember the Azov
Azov
20,000 battalion top soldiers of Ukraine were captured without a bullet being fired. And then you're telling me they've continued the war and they've pushed back in Kursk and other places. And that's what ticked off Putin the other day. He had 40 some drones, I think 24 or 40. I get the 2. He had 2 drone attacks. One went against his helicopter while he was looking at trying to get back the land. He was ready for peace when he had 5 districts that he had conquered and he wasn't going to give back, which I said from the beginning, that's exactly what he would do. He wanted the richest areas of Ukraine, and he didn't want to blow up Kiev because it's the history of the Rus. It's the Russian history. He didn't want to blow up the infrastructure, the pipelines. That's his oil going across those pipelines. So what did he do? He put up now the Crimea. There was, a British commando attack, blew it up real good. And then there was the fake drones that came into a port in Ukraine that supposedly was blown up by Putin. No, it didn't happen. We saw the port. There was nothing blown up. But what did it tell us? A whole bunch of drones just arrived from the European Union, including France, Germany, and Britain. Those are the drones that were used against Putin's helicopter. Putin doesn't like to get shot out of the air. Then they use the other drones, supposedly, to go 2,000 miles into Russia in a semi-trailer truck. Yeah, right. During war. Yeah, I'm sure that happened. But anyway, the point is those drones went after 41 planes that got blown up.
Let me tell you something. I got an anecdotal story about,
Supposedly. I don't believe any of these things. I don't believe any other side has the truth. No, they don't.
No. Whatever we're hearing is a lie. It's got to be. The Russians know how to manage their large space, especially with the trucking business. They've always known that. This has been a part of their heritage, is to manage their security when they're so spread out. And back in the day, we took some buses into the Soviet Union and traveled all the way down to Armenia and back up to Moscow. So we saw the country. And they're security paranoid inside the country. And I'm sure that has not changed. And so the idea that they could have snuck so many trucks, it's so laughable, but I guess it's what the American people will swallow. And so that's what they say. And if they found that didn't work, they'll just tell some new lie. So I don't think we know anything about what is really going on there.
Correct.
And I hope Trump does. He says he didn't know about the attack. I don't get that at all. Is Tulsi Gabbard asleep as well?
Oh, she's completely useless.
Yeah, but that's the front. But no, I don't believe that. I believe that they knew, and for some reason it continued. And if he didn't know, he better be firing everybody in the senior executive service in his government, which is about 10,000 people.
In his
because those are the saboteurs that are doing this to him. And if he's going to do it piecemeal, he's never going to get on top of this.
Fire all senior executive service members immediately. Yes, correct. Yes. Or as you say, pay them $1 and just let them leave on their own.
Well, they all claim they can't be fired in their documents, which we have published years ago. And yeah, the other way is to just pay them $1 and let them come into the office and pretend, which they obviously won't do. These are very entitled people. The deer and her baby outside. Okay. Um, yeah, so that is the Crown Agent group that is running. Those are the shock troops of the deep state, which is run out of Britain and the Pilgrims Society for the British Crown. That's the sequence of events here. And we can't just stick with this idea that the CIA did it all. No, the CIA, in our belief and research, is taking orders directly from MI6. So they don't do anything without orders from London. And obviously,
So
Tulsi Gabbard doesn't either know this, or if it's that bad, we better start making heads roll right now. And it doesn't matter. Take the collateral damage of people filing lawsuits for back wages. The government can pay the lawyers.
yeah, these are unelected career officials in agencies that overrule Trump's appointees. That's what's going
Right.
on. And then they've
Exactly.
swamped him with 180 lawsuits and more every day.
Right.
They've swamped him with judicial anarchy, which is, again, another apocalypse of its own. We've never seen anything like this in American history. So Trump has from all directions to try to balance the insanity. And I think that it's certainly gotten to him and that he's on a revenge tour this time, and that he has some good intentions, but we can't say yet because remember his first administration, he put a lot of these things in place. We had a list of 12 things that he should do. He was working on all of them at first, and then they disappeared, and then they
Yeah, the
dissolved.
bureaucrats in the senior executive service will slow roll any order they get
So he
from the
can't trust
executive, who is
anybody.
supposed to be their boss.
Yeah, he knows he can't trust anybody. So one of his first executive orders was essentially restructuring the entire advisors that he had, particularly through the National Security Council, basically taking away all their power and putting it in his hands so no decisions can be made without his direct approval.
Let's talk
Now,
first example about the military, because we know from our research that our military is driven from London. We know that Serco is running much of our U.S. Navy, which means the Admiralty and Serco and the American Navy are working together. So what he has to do is take that leadership away. He can't wait. They're not gaining anything by not moving right now. They're only losing because you give those people that are in place opportunity to thwart whatever you're trying to do. You've got to just cut it off and send them home and have them start farming at home.
I don't think that Washington District of Crime is redeemable. I don't think that there could, because we have to go back and rescind so many laws. It's like, for instance, Elon Musk came in with Doge, and remember, he didn't do a darn thing. He hired some young people to use Grok 3, simply took all the information they had, threw it in, and asked a few questions, and Grok 3 spits out the answer. And what did it tell us? That there was trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. Trillions. And so now what do they put forth? They put to have those stop, they have to rescind or a recession motion for the past budget and for the current budget. In other words, they have to pass an action allowing those cuts to be made. Well, after trillions of dollars, and by the way, Trump said that there was trillions still that Doge was going to release from fraud, and that would be the U.S. Federal Reserve. We don't know any of that $35 trillion. None of it. We don't have to pay it. But anyway, and he remember, Doge wasn't able to do anything with the Pentagon. The Pentagon usually goes 2.5 trillion in the hole from black ops every year and off book accounting because no two computers in the Pentagon can talk to each other because of supposed security reasons. So they can't do an audit. And that's the reason every person in the position who ever tried to audit the Pentagon came up and all they could say is, all we can tell you is there seems to be, the last time it was $4.5 trillion missing. No, it was 2 point something. Then the time before that, 4.5, before that. And then cumulatively, one audit said that they were able to go back far enough to say that there's $9 trillion missing for the accounting that was spent by the Pentagon. So the Pentagon doesn't go by the budget. So the big, beautiful budget, it had a deficit. Trump already made up that deficit in the few months that he made money off of the tariff. That would cover
Right.
that deficit. But people don't want to look at truth. They want to look at corruption in the way that they're used to doing things. So what we have here is
Well,
that,
that is a fallacy. I think that the average person on the street still thinks that the federal government is doing them any good at all. And I've asked people, tell me one thing you've benefited from the federal government. And about the only one we get is defense. They don't even collect our garbage. That's handled locally. So
and defense.
they could go away, I think, and we wouldn't hardly notice.
Well, what's happened is, you see, every time someone says anything to a communist country, they have to come back immediately and say they're going to do worse to you. That's the way it works. It's all lies. And so what I was about to say earlier was, what did Putin recently do after the helicopter? He was very upset. So he then caused the offensive to be launched in that lower province and tried to take back the land that he had at the moment when he offered the first ceasefire. Because the first ceasefire was ended by Zelensky within minutes. The second one was ended by both of them over the fight over this land that all of a sudden Ukraine was able to reclaim from Putin, and Putin wanted it because it was going to be part of the agreement. That's the reason Trump can't get him to have an agreement until he gets back the parts of, first off, he'll want blood for Crimea. And remember, Obama gave Crimea. If they want to talk about Trump, doing nothing, or Biden allowing basically now it's 6 provinces to be taken by Putin. Well, let's remember, all of those provinces were Russians when they were USSR. And so they want back their motherland. This is their motherland. They're fighting for their and they believe in their motherland more than any other country maybe on the earth. So what can Putin do? He pulled out, as I was telling the story about Syria. When it got serious and Obama looked like he was ready for Armageddon, Putin moved in tactical nuclear weapons, didn't he? And they showed us them. So what did he do just yesterday? Paraded tactical nuclear weapons, moving them to the front. I don't believe any nuclear weapon has ever been exploded. And even though yesterday I was reading the mathematical statistics of when they blew up hydrogen bombs, and then they measured its effect, and they knew that it had to be hydrogen or a nuclear explosion. Complete and absolute nonsense. They believed that any hydrogen bomb blown up over water, the ocean particularly, would have infinite resources to create a chain reaction that would blow up the whole earth. So do you think that they blew up hydrogen bombs on an island in the Pacific? You would really be stupid if you did. That's like believing the Chinese have their permanent greenhouse on the dark side of the moon. If you believe this technological, it's really pornography, because it's lies, and they know it's lies. And politics, it's all lies. And once the lies then become accepted, they tell the lies to get you used to what's called revelation of the method of the demon inside their lie. It becomes a phantom, then a specter, then a demon when they make it into law. So we have people. Here's what I say. Any person who is part of our constitutional republic that is supposed to be representing us in Washington, D.C., that doesn't read a bill can't vote for it.
Right.
And that they should be called for recall. They should have to go every 6 months to a mandatory possible recall because they don't vote the way they lied during their campaign. And there should be no money given by anybody to any campaign ever that doesn't come from taxes. Period. Everyone should have this. I should have the same exact chance to be president as somebody who's a billionaire, like Trump, who got $4.5 billion from the British when he started Truth Social. Okay. Hello, that's corruption from the get-go. And I would immediately basically say that every person working in a political office has to sign again an oath that they will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America at penalty of treason instantaneously. So when we see anarchist judges going against the Constitution, then we impeach them immediately. We don't have to go through procedures. Any citizen should stand up and say, that's anti-constitutional. Here's the Constitution. This is what you did. You made open borders and you took the power to close the border from the executive branch and you put it into the judicial branch, well, that's anti-constitutional. Everyone who voted for that, everyone who voted for the bill, I don't care about these political bills that are budgets that include political items that are basically the pork fat that are part of that bill. There should be one item per bill. All these things should be easily solved by following the laws we have. But at this point, this is like apocalypse. It's like the war of all against all. It seems as if Trump is on a war against everyone. Now Putin's going to be on a war against everyone. He's threatening tactical nuclear weapons. And then North Korea came out and they said they have enough fissile material for 24 nuclear bombs. Well, they're nutcases. That's not President. That's a fake president of North Korea. If you don't know that, just look back at the pictures. That's as bad as fake Joe Biden. So we have, everywhere you look, the mainstream media is supposed to protect us, the little people. They do the opposite. The government is supposed to help us.
They're protecting their owners.
Opposite. That's it.
The top 6 corporations in the U.S.
Yeah, the rat lines of money. And that's what the British are good at.
BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, J.P. Morgan, and Goldman Sachs.
The British put a tax on
Wells Fargo also.
Everything where a boat went, or later where trains went. They taxed everywhere where commerce could go. That's why they became the empire that the sun never sets upon, because they had the most ruthless type of commerce that then became their government. The British East India Company folded right into the government. And then the rich people like Cecil Rhodes and the Rothschild, the 3 Rothschilds and the other evil ones who started his group, that was basically the end. That was hegemony.
Right.
And the plan for hegemony has been very effective over the last 100 years. We know what it is. And soon you'll be putting out a book on Lillian Scott Troy. You've put out many articles on it, revealing this plan. The plan is going absolutely swimmingly, according to the British Pilgrims Society. So when people ask us, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? At this point, we told you the corruption of crypto coin, but that was because...
Can I stop you there before you get off of Lillian Scott Troy and the plan of corporatizing the world and running the world through corporations, no longer governments? That was the plan. That was the big plan hatched by Cecil Rhodes and his crowd, and then was carried forward by the Pilgrims Society. And one of the things that Rhodes wrote was that he said this strategy will not work unless America is a part of the British Empire, is a part of this plan, because they knew our economy was big enough to stop whatever they might try to do. And so this is the secret, one of the secrets that Lillian Scott Troy uncovered in her investigative journalism in about 1907, 1908, is that they want to annex America. And she was specifically looking at J.P. Morgan, Vanderbilt, who else? Rockefeller, J.D. Rockefeller, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds. She saw that these people had gotten together and they had agreed, we have got to annex America. And bringing up to today, that is still the plan, to annex America and make it British again. And that sounds crazy, but that has been their consistent strategy ever since they devised it, and they're carrying on with it. And they've got control of the banks, so they've had unlimited resources to carry out this agenda. I mean, let me give you another example. We know for a fact, can prove, that Richard Nixon's cabinet was peopled by members of the Pilgrims Society. We also know from Pilgrims documents that Lyndon Johnson was a Pilgrim. And isn't it curious that in the year before JFK's death, he specifically warned of secret societies and secret oaths. And I am positive that the JFK papers are going to edit out the idea that he knew it was the Pilgrim Society, that he needed to abolish, because he was also talking about abolishing the CIA, which we now know from intelligence documents was a specific creation of MI6 led aristocrats in the organization that has now come to be called Five Eyes, but back then was called the UK-USA Agreement. It was so secret that even most American politicians didn't even know it existed until 2010. So we have been the victims of a very long game our whole lives, and the lives of our parents and some of our grandparents. And that is this consistent strategy and tactic that has plagued our world, because these people are demons. They lie to protect this strategy. And by lying and inviting in the demons, they invite in child sacrifice, they invite in pharmaceutical Armageddon, they invite in electronic warfare, wireless attacks with wireless technologies. They've invented all these things to carry forward this objective. In their minds, this is all consistent. And that's what everybody has always said in the alt media. Well, that's crazy. Well, that's crazy. Well, that's crazy. Yeah, individually they're crazy. But when you think of it from their viewpoint, it all makes sense.
Some of the richest countries in the world are controlled by Putin. They can call it Kyrgyzstan, they can call it Turkmenistan, they can call it whatever they want. It's still Russian, and they control the oil and they control the resources. And Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, and the coal and all the other resources. And so the British have been the kings and queens of false flags. They started World War I and World War II. They're trying to start this war by blowing up Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. And so what's the result of that? Well, remember, Nord Stream 1 came into Germany and they never told anybody. So they were getting Putin oil and they were jacking up the price and selling it to the Europeans and lying to them, saying it didn't even exist. They were the ones who blew up that. And now they're almost bankrupt. Germany is at a point that it's kind of like Hitler. When Hitler came to power, they are so desperate because they don't have electricity. Their manufacturing is closing down. The tariffs are harming them. But why? Because they don't get the oil they got before.
Well, let's keep in mind the British fought 2 world wars over Germany. Why? When all of the royal family are German from the Saxe-Coburg line. And the ultimate reason was we had these demons called the Pilgrims Society who decided that they did not want to compete with Germany economically, and they did not want to compete with Russia economically. And so their whole foreign policy from then till now has been to destabilize those 2 countries and take over their resources. And they even fought the Crimean War, was a British attack to take over that area of the world, because they knew how rich and prosperous it could be if they could control it. And they had already subdued much of Africa and its resources through the Rothschilds, the De Beers gold, the diamond mines, and that continues to this day. By the way, that's what has funded the Rhodes Scholarships. What are the Rhodes Scholarships? Specifically to recruit Americans into their Annex of America agenda. So, it's taken us 12 years to figure this out. And this engineer didn't let go. But now we can see it. And now we just need to understand that so we can disempower these people who have used secrecy and demonic activity to control our societies and our cultures up till now. And I think now, with these revelations, we have an opportunity to change the playing field.
Northwestern Europe, their history is a history of marauding Vikings, Brits, Germans, Gauls, the Franks. They were all pretty much mixed to the point that they were crossbred. And they, right now, are the 3 aggressors. That would be Britain, Germany, and France. They are the 3 aggressors. And we also know the Swedes are in on it. But the point is that this is the same thing they've done since they came to power, claiming that, whether it's a monarchy or whether it's, they are superior or whatever. So what has Merz, the new leader of Germany, said. He said that they're going to war because Putin has harmed them. They blew up Nord Stream 1. That's who harmed them, their own
Right.
people. That was Angela Merkel, okay?
Okay,
So,
lie one.
pardon me?
Okay, that's lie one.
Yeah.
We've got a major power telling a lie that's based on institutionalized information, which is a lie. So therefore, we're listening to a demon.
Oh, totally. And they're cleverer than humans because they're higher than humans when they fall down as a Luciferic fallen angel. They fall down into the realm where they are much cleverer and they really know how to brainwash human beings. But let's look at what Europe has done. Okay, Britain declared war against Putin a year ago. That means the NATO has been defiled and it no longer exists because he went to war with them. And he also created the reconstruction deal with Zelensky twice, and twice Zelensky signed it. Then Trump came along and offered that he would buy the resources and that he would control reconstruction. And then Zelensky signed that too. That's the problem, as I've said for the last few weeks. Until that is resolved, that means Britain, if they have that contract, they can go in and defend Ukraine without NATO. Same thing can happen with America. It's just that we wouldn't want them to join. But what has NATO done? The European Union agreed some weeks ago that they would debank their own nation. They would take money out of their own citizens' banks to create an $800 billion fund to go to war with Putin. Now they say they've lowered it to 700 billion, but they say they won't say how much, but they say that they're well on the way to collecting that money. Okay, who is allowing Germany to remilitarize? Okay, that was us. We had anywhere from 50 to 100,000 NATO troops in Europe. Most of them were American.
Right.
And then behind our back, Angela Merkel created a 50,000 man standing army, which was against the NATO treaty. France did the same thing, and then they combined those so they have 100,000 man army, and all they need now is the money because they gave all their weapons to Zelensky. So they're rebuilding it. So all those drones that just went after Putin, those were probably all brand new, and they were, I bet you, I could even name the country they were built in, but I'm not going to. But the point is that they're built in a very, very rich country that nobody watches them and they don't care. And they could have been part of the British commando attack. They say that, this is what I love. They say that the people who drove these semi-trailers and then controlled the drones, it was a suicide mission and they're all dead. Isn't that nice? There's no witnesses. And then we see one picture of some destroyed planes. That's all I've seen. I haven't looked hard, but so we see these propaganda pictures. Is this yellow journalism?
That's so easy to refute because any kind of transportation hub anymore has got x-rays that look into the contents of the trucks. So the idea that they're hiding in the top, that it's just laughable.
They have bomb sniffers all over America, folks. Those things that hang out in the highway, those are sniffers. They know what's in the trucks. Sniffers.
They can point a laser and see the dynamite or explosive.
Yeah. So you can't tell me that this narrative they're giving has anything to do with truth. But anyway, so that's our answer to Trump. Let me just say one more thing about Trump. If the dark Enlightenment people really chose J.D. Vance, we were told from the beginning that Trump won't make it a few months until he's assassinated and J.D. Vance will take his place, at which point, folks, America is gone. That's it. Dark Enlightenment will take over because J.D. Vance is an ignorant fool. Just listen to what he has to say. It's all lies. Everything he says is a lie. Everything he says he did is a lie. Every company that he supposedly worked in, Peter Thiel was there and bailed him out. And that's the reason he went from company to company. There's nothing about J.D. Vance that doesn't say he is a groomed Pilgrims Society worshiper who wants to get the award from the king. And the king thinks that really he is somebody very special. But remember what he wants. He wants $5 trillion a year to stop climate change, though no one has changed the climate. Where's the money go? No one wants to ask these kind of questions. So don't get into crypto coin unless you know that it's a gambling casino. We don't know what Trump is going to do. and Putin and Trump and Zelensky and Putin and what's happening there, folks, there are more demons that have come up through the gates of hell right now that really want to take us to Armageddon, to apocalypse, to the war of all against all, more so than I've ever seen in history.
And what do Christians do about it? A couple of things that we know specifically from the Bible and from your experience at dealing with demon possession. One of them is tell Satan to get behind you. And as you've said, you don't encounter the devil directly because he's got plenty of weapons to attack you. And if you've got any sin in your life, probably not a good thing to do. But tell him to get behind you and let God deal with him. And recognize that God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
I don't believe there are nuclear weapons. Instead of that, I am building, along with Tyler and Michael and others, some doing it consciously, some not. You're building the fiery chariot of Isaiah, of Ezekiel, of the ascension of Christ. And we are building that because we are building a new world in the etheric realm. We're building the new heaven. And we're all, as Christ said, his Father's house has many mansions.
Many mansions, yeah.
And I have gone there ahead to prepare them for you. And he said, no, it's already prepared. We just have to build it and claim it.
It's interesting you mentioned Ezekiel, because Ezekiel specifically in 600 BC was preaching that the practice of usury was an abomination. And if we look at what the core of the problem is that we're addressing, it is the proponents of usury in our world, which includes slavery, child sacrifice, property theft, intellectual property theft, any kind of abuse. And the common theme from all of those is that's not love.
My
So
research
is embrace love.
My researchers have pointed out that the Babylonian Radnites were Chaldeans, they were Turanians, and they were demon worshippers. And now we know that. That's why you've done whole reports on, they took every god there was, and every city had its own god, and they turned it into a demon. And that's what we have
read the
now.
story of Solomon in his later life, and you'll see the names of those gods, and we're still addressing them now. One of which everyone's familiar with is Moloch. Goes way back.
All the millions who have died in Ukraine and Russia, if we are to believe the reports, were all sacrifices to the god Moloch for the sake of the benefactors who were worshipers of mammon, of money, because the bankers support both sides. They win. No matter what happens with the war, the bankers who are brokers, there shouldn't be bankers who are brokers or brokers who are bankers, they always win. And so the Rothschilds have promoted every war that you know of in modern history, and they made a killing off of it because they're murderers.
Yes.
It's so sad. So our world now, we have to remember, the good news is the remnant has already been chosen. If you don't know you've been touched, maybe you weren't chosen. You ought to really get on the bandwagon, because if you look up and you see all these things coming down from the sky and you don't think those are the evidence of higher beings, then there's really not much that can be done for you. But the remnant has been reaped. And so those who are building the fiery chariot into the heaven that they are planning for the future, those are the people that we're talking to. Other people will go into cognitive dissonance and fear, just as Michael has talked about. And the fear is how they stop love. Where there's fear, there's no love. Where there's love, there's no fear.